Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm very excited that we can meet and talk a little bit about these forms that we have. I I think that we have a few participants right now, and I see that the list is growing by the minute. So what we what we're gonna try to do, and we'll do a little bit of kind of introduction in the beginning, so to give time to those that are trying to log in. Basically, today most of the presentation will be done by Tim White. He has been helping me put this together, and also he was one of the main players on our WeCertify or Maple team while this application was being developed. Not sure if you're aware of the WeCertify or Maple project, but it was a concept, blah, I can't speak, must be the lunch, that we work on for about a couple of years, I think, with IBM to see if we can have some type of app that will enhance the way we do some of the investigations. And we took RFOs, and so adverse events basically, and we took RFO, retained foreign objects, and pressure injuries as the two main ones. RFO was the one that we started with, and then pressure injuries was introduced later. So basically, these two forms is what happened is in August 31st of this year, the project ended by the decision of the program, and just we got all the information that we needed. It was decided that we were going to end the project, but we thought that the stuff that we learned during this process was too valuable to just throw it all away. So what we did is we took all the information that was part of this app, and we created these two forms that Tim will be displaying and sharing with us today. And our goal is that we can start using these forms throughout the state, mainly right now to work on, like I say, RFOs and pressure injuries, because the questions are driven to those two type of investigations. But our hope is also that as we start using this, that we can start gathering some information and be able to apply the same type of format, and we can create different forms that you can use for any investigation. So we will be, as we share this form with everybody and we start using it, or you start using it, I will be asking for feedback in a in a regular basis, so we can start providing some more information for you guys, or more tools that you can use for these other investigations. And hopefully Tim and I can answer most of the questions that you guys have today. So before we get started, Tim, are you connected now? I'm gonna take my Mother Nature's way of mute from my screen. So Tim, if you're in, can you jump in?
we're going after this to try to clear it up by the end of next year. And so one of the other goals with this project was to try to attack that backlog, and we did so very successfully with regard to retained foreign objects, which was the first part of the app that was released, and then secondly for pressure ulcers. I don't have the exact numbers of how many we got done, but I know it was pretty significant, the progress that we made. Roberto, are you back on yet?
I'm back in, so I'm sorry. I didn't even know that I dropped off. So can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just kind of ran with it. I think everybody got dropped off and we all had to sign back in.
Huh. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, if you want to just take it off from here,
Okay.
let me see. Are you able to share your screen?
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of other comments. The Maple project, as we knew it, ended the end of August. It was decided that we were on iPads, and it was decided that we were not on the right hardware platform, and we're exploring ways that we can take what we learned and what we accomplished and get it into a format that'll work on everybody's tablet so that we're not trying to have double hardware. So that's where we're at. So what Roberto did, and I had some input in it, was, let's see, how do I grab the screen? Here we go. What we did was come up with a couple of, I've logged out. Hold on a second here.
So what I'm saying is,
There you go. Okay, I'm going to mute myself again so you guys don't get the background noise from the conversations here.
I need to see how to get back in there, so just bear with me for a second. This is what I want to present. Are you seeing a picture of my wife and grandkids, or are you seeing a picture of the pressure?
I was going to say, who is that?
Anybody?
Yes, I see that, Tim.
What do you
Awesome
see?
picture. Sorry, I see a picture of your wife and grandkids.
Aren't they wonderful? And there's my two daughters.
Very cool.
Okay, I got to figure out how to make this go. I'm not sure. I'm going to stop presenting for a second. I'm going
Yeah, and
to.
then you can probably pick what you want to present.
Yeah, trying to do that, but
Hello?
I'm here.
because that's change, right?
Yeah, no, I just, so I'm going to put myself in mute while, but you ask me if you have any questions. Hello?
It was a, what was it? It was new change.
So new change she registered, but
So that will be in that screen. Okay.
it has to be in the package.
It has to be in the ticket for in new change.
Yes, that's right.
And then we will do that in that one.
That's all. Now we go
Okay,
No, no.
we will
I think we're
On some.
getting there. We should now be able to see.
Yeah.
every Tuesday we will decide.
Yeah. Okay, we can have that.
That's okay.
We're going to start with the RFO. And a couple things. I'm going to kind of go through these. Are fillable PDF files. And I'll stop periodically for questions so that if people have questions about the process, then we'll answer them at that time. What we did was sort of try to mirror as best we could the investigation that we were doing on the Maple app. So we start with an intake number. I would suggest to all the surveyors that you keep a master of this form in your documents on your C drive, because if you're out in the field, you may not have access to your other drives. And then as soon as you open it up for an investigation, you give it an intake number and save it again with that intake number so that you can move it over to your H drive later. The initial notes section is pretty much set up so that the stuff that you normally start your 807 with can be done here. This is sort of how I do it. And then in this area here, if you wanted to, you could put an interview with Sue and what she said, etc., blah, blah, blah. And what you'll see is this, the print is big, it's all big, but if you notice, when I can continue with it, and what happens is the print just gets smaller to make more room. So you can continue writing. I've been turning these in without any 807. This becomes my 807. I can document interviews here, and as you'll see in a little bit, there are other areas where you can document different parts of it. So the first thing we want to know is what kind of RFO was it, and you have drop downs for almost all this stuff with area to put further detail. So soft goods, sponges, towels, needles or sharps, instruments, miscellaneous items, other foreign objects, and an area below that where you could further describe what the foreign object was. What kind of surgery was it? This was a total hip arthroplasty. Where did they do it? What was the date of the surgery? And you have a pop-up calendar. And I will tell you right now that we're looking at changing this because on the tablet screen, that calendar is very tiny and hard to see. So we may change this to a free-form date entry instead of a pop-up. Was it an emergency? And a description of the event. Here's what you can put in terms of what happened regarding the retained foreign object. When did it happen? Was it before end of surgery? Generally, if it's before end of surgery, we don't consider it a retained foreign object, but anything out of the operating room we do. So you can then go and make your choices with these. Who discovered it? When was it discovered? How was it discovered? Was a surgery required to remove it? And again, you've got yes or no's, areas for further notes. Were they notified, yes or no? When? Where is it in the medical record that shows that they were notified? What was the date it was reported to the department? And you'll see here a violation alert. Several areas in these you'll see violation alerts, and it gives you a suggestion in case, in this case, was it reported to us more than 5 days after the incident? So we're going to refer you to Health and Safety 1279, and if you hover over the question mark, you can actually read the regulation that we're talking about to give you better, just some guidance on observations, interviews, record reviews, etc. Since it's an RFO, we want to look at counting procedures. Who did the count? If it wasn't done, why wasn't it done? Sometimes in an emergency, they don't do an initial count. And then further counts, when did they do them? Who did them? So we kind of go through all the counting stuff. And then we want to know for each of these, was the count correct? And if it wasn't, then again, we want to take a look at surgical services in Title 22 and possibly write that. Any questions so far? I'm going kind of quickly, so. No? Okay, I'll continue going there. We want to look at their awareness and their culpability. Were they aware? Did they have policies that guide them for counting procedures? Did they have a policy for intentionally retained items? If in fact it was intentionally retained, because we do see that fairly often. Patient disclosure, reporting to us. Did they follow all these policies? If no, then we want to look at the policy sections in Title 22. Did they inspect? Was there any wanding? In certain cases, wanding or intraoperative imaging are performed. If it's radiopaque sponges or et cetera, they want to x-ray. Area for some explanation. Were there any post-op complications? If so, what were they? When did they happen? Did they do a root cause analysis? was this preventable? And this part's kind of important because I want to make sure surveyors understand this is our decision as to whether or not this was a preventable incident, not theirs, because they'll always say no. So if it was preventable, though, we want to get somebody who would concur with that. It makes the writing a lot easier, so we will want to know when, who it was, and what was their title. Next one, same thing. Was there facility failure that contributed to the event? If so, same information. Was there potential for patient harm? Was there patient harm? Did the patient sustain a disability? And then we get to the final part of it, which is recommended outcomes. Did this meet the definition of an adverse event? And if so, how was it substantiated? And we can say with or without violations. We can say whether or not there was failure to report. We can talk about, note that whether or not the patient was notified in a timely manner. And then is it suspected of an IJ? So that's the RFO one. Any questions?
So Tim, this is Virginia.
Hi, Virginia.
So is this form already available to be downloaded?
Yes.
And
Well, what Virginia, what the plan was is after the presentation, basically, I will email the form to all the users. We have not given it to all the users yet,
okay.
so
I think there's one typo that I saw, the facility failure. You just said facility, I think. Where was that?
okay.
Going down.
I'm getting there.
Was there a facility? You just said facility, not facility failure.
Oh, yeah, see that here?
Facility. Number 11.
Do you see that, Roberto?
Should be a
Was there
facility
a
failure.
facility that contributed to the event?
Facility
Yeah, it should be
failure.
facility failure. It should be.
Okay.
Was there a failure of the facility? What is better?
I'm sorry?
Was there a failure on the part of the facility?
Yes. It should read, was there a facility failure that contributed to the event?
Okay, 11. Okay, I'll fix that today before we send it out.
Anything else from the group? You need to unmute your phone to talk. Or
Yeah,
the
so
computer.
what I was gonna say also is that, and I don't know if I missed some of the intro that you were giving, Tim, but for the rest of the users, for those that have not used this before, I think that the idea is that, so this form will help you gather, the appropriate information, so the decision making at the end is very simple. So that is, that is where these forms come to play. So, just to how you will use it.
Yeah, we expect any investigation of RFO to use this process moving forward.
One of the other things too, Roberto, that I'll send to you, I've developed a list, a document list, if you will, to send to the facility ahead of time when you're going out to do one of these, so that they can have the proper documents that you need to complete your investigation, and even some other things like, again, there's some check boxes as well for questions that we ask whether or not it was done or not done. And the other thing I want to say about both of these things as we were doing it with the Maple project is we had overwhelming acceptance and support from the hospitals in which we used them. They absolutely loved it because they knew what to expect. They knew what to have handy. I mean, let's face it, the sooner they get us out of there, the better they like it. So this allowed us to do some of these investigations very quickly, and move on to something else. So,
Awesome.
and as I said, I've been able to I've been working on 5 of these that I just did last week, and I've been able to, I'm going way up here, this part of the document, I've eliminated my 807 completely.
Perfect.
This
Yeah, and those are some of the things that, you know, once we have a process, and I know, you know, I don't have to say this, but I know that every office does kind of their own thing and they have their own requirement, but my understanding is, and Virginia, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that at some point we want everybody to be doing this the same way. We're not saying that you have to type the exact same thing, but you know, if we're collecting all the information in this form, that we don't have to ask the surveyors to collect extra documents or things like that. So.
Right. That's the goal.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions from the people listening, or comments or suggestions? We're open to that as well.
She's been on there.
She said she didn't know what time it was. I just really quick and pasted it and sent it
Is
to
that a question or a conversation?
Not fine though.
Guys, if you have a question, make sure you're close to the microphone so we can hear the question. And if not, just go ahead and, if it's just a conversation, go ahead and mute your line.
Okay, so let's move on then to pressure ulcers. Again, pretty much the same format. We're talking about pressure injury rather than the RFO. Same kind of intake information, diagnosis. At what stage was the pressure ulcer reported by the facility? So our choices here are stage 3, stage 4, unstageable, or a Kennedy terminal ulcer, all of which are adverse events. Anything less than that is not. So let's just say stage 3 here. It was on the patient's coccyx. When we get to this question, was it a stage 2 at time of admission? And if we say yes here, then we're done with the investigation, and we go to the end and say that it is not substantiated, and you're finished, because then if it was a stage 2 on admission, then it is not an adverse event. And Roberta, we might want to put something here that says that.
Okay. Yeah. So it will be after question 3.
Yes.
If yes, consider reviewing
Yes.
safety, and this is not considered an adverse event.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, if you guys want to provide me with like some wording, then I can definitely go ahead and add that in there. That's super simple.
Okay. I think we have it. Yeah, I'll get it to you.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
What was the date the pressure injury was discovered? Who discovered it? Whether or not the physician was notified? If so, who was it? And what was the date and time of the notification? And again, the violation alert that says that it shall be discussed with and developed in collaboration with the patient, et cetera, et cetera. This one's very important because it's part of the patient notification section when you're working in your in ACO, is date the patient responsibility was notified. The regulation says that the patient must be notified prior to the department being notified, and the department has 5 days. So you got to do a little calculating there and see, because if they didn't notify the patient and there's no good reason why they didn't, then that is a violation. Then the date it was reported to us, so we would look at these 2 dates and go from there. Were there additional pressure injuries? If yes, how many? And you can then go through these steps for others as well. Roberto, I'm just thinking here too, we might have to have some note area here in case this is a yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I won't send anything until I get your final feedback, and and then we can move forward from there.
So as far as the assessment, when was the patient admitted? What were their diagnoses? Are there any additional comorbidities? These are all things that may contribute to the development of pressure ulcers in a situation where they're not preventable because they have these comorbidities. Things like if they're in the ICU and they're on ECMO, you almost cannot turn a patient if that's the case. It's very difficult. So they're at a much higher risk of developing a pressure ulcer, and the hospital may not be at fault for that. They're still doing the best they can. This is another very important area, and I'll show you something here too in terms of the use of it, is were there medications that contribute? And we've just kind of put them by class, and if you use the control key, you can pick as many as you want. Pressors and heparin, whether or not they're on a beta blocker, others, because if they're ventilated, we always want to talk about propofol. And if they're serious respiratory, usually they're on some kind of steroids, which can be contributory as well. Did they do an assessment on admission? Was there any evidence of skin breakdown on admission? If yes, what was it? And we can choose again with the control. We can choose all of these we want, and then an area here for additional notes and explanation of what those were. Was the patient pediatric? Yes or no? If it's yes, we want to use the Braden OD scale. That's what almost all hospitals are using now for the skin risk. If not, what was the regular Braden scale? And what was the assessed risk? Were they able to participate in their plan of care? And again, it's a yes, no, or they refuse. Also can help you come to your decisions on how you're going to look at this. Were they able to turn themselves? And again, important here, Roberto, we need to add refused there.
Okay.
Okay. Did they assess per policy? Was it wounds assessed per policy? And if so, who did it? Was it multidisciplinary? And if it was performed multidisciplinary, who participated? This is another important part of it, any medical devices in use, because these can be very, as I said, ECMO can be a contributor. If they're on CRRT, that's a continuous dialysis, and that can be an issue as well. So we want to list what devices, even the fact that they're ventilated, do they have an NG tube, a G tube, etc. Those can all be contributory. Were there any malnutrition factors, and if so, what were they? This comes from the dietary notes, and we would look at all of the different things here that may contribute to malnutrition, which puts them at higher risk for developing as well. We want to look at care plans. Did they have a care plan for skin breakdown? Did it follow community standards of care? We generally look at NPUAP for that, but we're really going to look at whatever they're using for their standard. But we want to make a note of whether or not it did follow. What did they base it on? And again, we can choose all of these we want. Incontinence, pain, mobility, mental status, medical devices. Obviously, just about everyone's going to have acuity and comorbidities and medications. Did they turn the patient every 2 hours unless otherwise noted? And you have to look at that documentation pretty carefully. And I've gotten to where many of the computer systems now, if you want to look at that and get documentation, it's going to be pages and pages and pages and pages of looking at whether or not this patient was turned. So I observe on their computer system on the EMR, and then I'll make a note that if it's all okay, I just make a note that I observed it on the EMR and that it was satisfactory. Pressure reducing, were they using barrier creams? Was the patient and family education included in their care plan? Did they revise it once the wound was discovered? And if so, did they have any nursing interventions, and then we can look at what updates were made to the care plan. We have an area here where we can add additional things if you need to. Was there a wound care consult? If yes, who did it? Different hospitals and hospital systems, some will have a wound care nurse, some use a physical therapist, some have a wound care physician. So we see all those things, and sometimes they're all involved with it. So again, you can choose all you want, but the main person, we want to know the name and the date of the consult. Did orders get written? Were they followed? Did they take photographs? Was there a nutritional assessment? And we want to see a nutritional assessment when the wound is declared reportable. At that point, if it's a stage 3 or worse, we need a nutrition consult to happen in that process as well. Were the wound consults being done in a repeat manner? Did they follow the dietary recommendations? Was the patient on tube feeding or TPN? If not, what kind of meal, diet were they on, and how much were they eating? We have the same area of awareness and culpability where policy and procedure, was it nationally recognized? Did it include assessment, wound care prevention, and management? Was the facility policy for initial skin assessment followed? Sometimes we see that this isn't followed well. Did they have a policy for reporting adverse events? And I've been seeing a few in their policies with adverse events that it does not include the need to notify the patient before they notify us, and if they're in violation of doing that, sometimes I point it out and write it under policy as well. Did they do a root cause analysis? Was it preventable? Same questions, and again, these are our answer. We make that determination, and sometimes, as I'm sure many of you know, they'll argue with you, but it's our call. Potential for harm, was there actual patient harm? Did they get a disability? Did it end up causing them to die? And then, did it meet the definition of an adverse event? How is it substantiated? And then failure to report, notify family, physician, or suspected IJ. So that's the end of that one. I've gone through these pretty quickly. Any questions? Comments?
So Tim, this is Roberto. So I have I have a question here, and I understand where that comes from. Joanne Gerhertz was asking, what about including options of non-IJAP and include definitions of IJ and non-IJAP? So normally in the past, so for the application itself, when it was in the system, that information will already come from the Aspen side. So the application was communicating or receiving basically kind of like the intake sheet that has all the basic information about the intake. So whatever you have selected in Aspen, the priority will actually show in here. So I mean, that is definitely something that we can add, especially if we're saying that, we want this to be the only document that we submit at the end. So any comment about that, Tim?
Yeah, I think if we just added under 1E on this last section, suspected of an administrative penalty, IJ or non-IJ.
Non-IJ, yeah.
We could add both, and then you could answer yes. This is not going to take you to that and answer it for you. It's not that interactive, and even the app wasn't that interactive where it would come and say, gee, this is big enough, we think it might be an IJ or a non-IJAP. That's something really that has to be discussed after you're done with the investigation, or at whatever point in the investigation that you think that's the issue, and you step out and you call your supervisor A supervisor calling now. And so, yes, I think it would be prudent to add the non-IJ as well as IJ administrative penalty, so that you can at least have it flagged that that's a possibility.
Okay, cool. And Joanne just asked also, she said, I'm assuming that the surveyor will have to print out this PDF for a supervisor to review. Well, either that or they can actually just email it to them, because they can just send an email. Like if you're still out in the field and you want your supervisor to review it, I mean, once you're done with the investigation, you can actually attach it to an email and send it. And I don't know your process, so I'll let you, Tim, answer, but that was her question. She said, I'm assuming that the surveyor will have to print out this PDF for supervisor to review it.
Yes, it becomes part of the packet, just the same as if you would submit your 807s with your packet when you turn it into your supervisor. This kind of takes the place of your 807s. It's a much more robust investigation, but yeah, it would get printed and submitted with the rest of your packet to your supervisor.
Okay. Cool.
Any other questions?
So, Tim,
Yes.
using this application, how much time do you normally use using this? In the tablet, when you had the tablet?
When I had the tablet and it was all touch screen, I could go pretty fast. Having to type a lot of this information, it's taking a little longer than it did with the iPad. And I think probably some surveyors will find that this takes longer than just jotting their notes on an 807. And to answer that, I go back to the fact that I think this is much more thorough an investigation. It makes sure that the surveyor is asking all of the questions that need to be asked for a particular investigation.
Yeah, and it's a very...
I clicked on the guy's name.
The process is pretty much laid out.
Let me see.
Please mute your phone if you're not asking a question. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, it just points out to, it's gonna take a while to adjust, not using it in the tablet, in the iPad, but I think this is a very consistent process that people need to start using.
I went to one hospital and did 5 of these. They were all pressure ulcers, and I was able to do 5 of them in about 4.5 hours.
And that's asking them for the documents up front,
Yeah,
right?
but again, the advantage of asking them for the documents is, and I can bring those up on the screen if people want to see them.
Yeah, maybe show them the documents that you asked them to prepare.
To break into your system.
And Roberto can add this to the...
Not that they couldn't, but
This form.
I'm looking. Bear with me a second. Pressure.
oh yeah.
That's not it. Just a second, guys.
That's okay.
I'm looking for that mandatory recommended guidance. Just a joke. I rewrote that whole entire form because I didn't like it. So submitted it to my supervisor. She submitted it to our district office, who submitted it to the forms committee down in San Diego, and I was called and basically almost like
Why are you doing this, right?
chastised.
Yeah.
You're not muted.
here we go. Here's the first one. This is for pressure ulcers. This has been sent to every hospital that I deal with, to the people that I deal with, and so that they have this to go by. And interestingly, a lot of them use this from the very beginning of discovery of a pressure ulcer. They start a file and they start gathering this stuff. So this is all the stuff that I need to complete my assessment of this particular situation. This is this shows who I might want to interview. And we can make this available to everybody.
Yeah, I think you should include this.
Yeah. And again, I put a couple things here like evidence of turning. It can, in some of these computer systems, that could be 100 pages long. So I tell them not to print it. I just look at it. And it's either satisfactory or it's not. I have one of these for RFOs as well.
Okay.
Let me see if I can bring that one up.
So make sure we include this part, Roberto.
This is the one for RFOs.
Okay.
And you notice I have some check boxes here for them for what kind of RFO was it. I have a checkbox for when it was discovered, and then the documents I need and the people I may need to interview, so that they can kind of put them on notice that they may be asked to come and interview to complete this investigation. So those are the two that I use. And I provide these ahead of time to the hospital. And when I go to investigate these, and I don't know if this is still differing from district office to district office, but we pre-announce. We tell them we're coming. These investigations are no secret because they told us about it, so there shouldn't have to be the element of surprise. And I'm pretty sure, Virginia, you're in agreement with that.
Oh yeah. We've told people this is a reported event, so they know about it.
So having these in their hand helps them get everything you need so that you can get in there, get done, and get out.
Very good.
So let's see here.
Looks good.
So any other questions? I would like to get some input, if possible, from some of the people who are seeing this maybe for the first time, whether or not they think this is something that is useful for them.
Well, we will ask them to make it useful for them. Since this is going to be a consistent way of investigating.
Yes, and it does give the supervisors like it as well, because they know exactly what to expect and where to find things.
Right. And I got the support of management for
Yeah.
it. So we should get the final count of how many of these are still in the district office after we do our cleanup for the Maple project. So maybe Roberto can give us the figures next week. And we assume that most of our Maple users have completed their investigations on their end, so we should get a good count next week or so.
So yeah, we're getting some comments on the side here. I guess some people are having issue with their sound; they can't hear anything. So I'm thinking it's just probably something with their setup. But what I did is actually I started recording this meeting from before we started. So what I'm gonna do is at some point I'm gonna post this information somewhere where it's accessible to all the surveyors, and they can see this thing and hear the things that we have been talking about. And I appreciate there is a comment from Tamara Cleveland that she was saying very good tool, not only expedite the investigation but also ensures the right questions are asked. So thank you, Tamara. And that's the whole idea. I think that is one of the most valuable thing, is that you have the right tools to gather all the information you need to make the right decision. We also got a question from Debbie Clifton, and she was asking, can we get one of these for complaints? And it definitely, I mean, we can start working on something. Like I mentioned in the beginning, the whole idea is that once you guys are using this and we can get some feedback, we definitely would love to, because the advantage of this form is that my team can put these forms together in a day or two. It doesn't take, if we, okay, so we had to have the right questions, we had to have the right format that you guys want for those forms, but we can put it together in a day or two. It doesn't take 6 months or 2 years like it did with some of these things as we were going through the application in the system. So definitely we would love to, to take what we have learned with this, proof of concept and apply it to any of the investigations that you guys do. So definitely, Debbie, we can start looking towards that to create something that we can apply to complaints.
I think that's a good suggestion to the complaints work stream that's going on right now.
I agree, and just
It gets passed on to those people in the group.
and I know that Heidi's pretty actively looking at what other software might be available out there on the market that's compatible with our hardware to do some of this same stuff. So there is activity in the background trying to move forward with this whole concept.
Yeah, we have one more question here, and definitely Janet Hayes, I think that's how you pronounce your last name. So she was saying, can we add at the top the same info that is on the top of the 807? So, and I think that's like facility name, provider number, those kind of things. I think that is what Tim has as his initial notes in there. So he just has the hospital entry. And I guess you can use that space for anything. Since you will probably, I am thinking that before you leave your district office or if you're out in the field, you'll probably get the intake. I'm thinking the intake notes or the intake information that has the basic information that you get from Aspen, that will have all of that information, so you can definitely add it to your initial notes there. We don't have anything feeding into this form directly from Aspen, so you have to actually type it yourself.
Well, and to kind of go one step further, we kind of looked at that, or at least I did. I didn't push for that, Janet, because you already have all that information, as Roberto said, on your intake. This document with the intake number is going to tie it to that intake and just become part of all the documentation that you turn in. So it would just be a duplication of information.
Awesome. Yeah, so we have one more question or a comment here from Mary Kay. She is the head of the training unit, and she was saying the complaints can use a critical element pathway available, and we discussed this with the backlog of complaints work group. They are currently fillable PDF documents. So yeah, I mean, definitely, because that's what these forms that we created are also. I mean, just a form where you can enter that information. So anything that we can work together to come up with one tool, so we don't have 50 different tools out there. I think that is the idea, so that we can all be in the same page.
Yes, I totally agree with that, because we've had that situation in the past where different groups will create different job aids or work tools, and they don't go to everybody, and everybody's using their own thing, and we really, really, really need to and want to standardize this process so that doesn't happen.
I see a question here. There are CE for GACs. I had no idea what CE is for. Oh, okay, somebody already responded. No, there are no CEs for GACs yet.
For this presentation?
No, what are CE?
Continuing education.
Okay. Yeah, Debbie already responded.
I think she's saying critical element now, Chrissy.
Let me see. Yeah, no critical element. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I had no idea what.
Yeah.
Okay, so does anybody else out there have any other questions or things like that? And if you are in the call and you have questions, please, when it's over, you can still send me those questions and I'll route them to Virginia and Tim, and we will have the right people look at your questions and vet them through whatever, because I am not familiar with the process that you guys do, but there are a lot of people. Jackie Linzer was a huge supporter of this project, and she was one of the owners. So we had some people that have been around for a while that are pretty familiar with these processes, that are gonna be looking over this information. So just please share your comments, share your ideas, suggestions, and hopefully we can, like I say, take all of this information and make a useful tool that we can apply to anything, any type of investigations.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, if there are no more questions, do you have anything else, Tim, or
No.
good?
I just want to say thank you to everybody who had enough interest to take a look at this. It's been a long time coming, and we're pretty proud of what we've come up with. So, and again, with Roberto, I'm happy to answer any questions. We're certainly willing to take a look at any improvements that can be made to this to make it better. So that's really all I have. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, team,
Yeah.
and Roberto and the group.
Thank you, Virginia. Thank you for supporting this. And like I say, I will work as getting this recording available for anybody that wants to see it, since I see that only 33 people, and hopefully one of those, some of those 33 people are in a group watching it together. So hopefully we have a good group of people, but we will make this available to anyone. Okay,
Yeah,
so,
we'll check during the DADM on how many attended this call.
okay. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.